Well, hello, spooky friends. Sorry for my lack of posting last week. I may have dropped my phone in the toilet, which happened to be what I was shooting my YouTubes on, but I've since bought myself a camera and it's game on. So this week I wanted to talk to you about a man of mystery. Not James Bond, but a really interesting story of a man. So he's often referred to as Jacques St Germain, or the Count of St Germain. There's a couple of different ways to refer to him. He was an 18th century, or even earlier, as we'll get to, man of mystery. Voltaire, upon meeting him, referred to him as the man who knows everything and never dies. When he appeared during the 18th century, he was a man of apparent wealth and prosperity, always adorned with diamonds, which were really sought after during this time. He was dressed in fine clothing and also was able to speak really eloquently to anybody around him. The Comte had a vast memory for history, often telling stories of history that seemed like he was there. And in fact, when asked, he would refer to himself as being in these places when he spoke about events that had occurred before. He could answer any question, and he could speak 17 languages in 8 different dialects in order to express himself in such ways. He was much loved in many courts by many members of royalty and advised the elite government bodies of the time, which is a really difficult role to get in during that time, and only a handful of people successfully did as such. People often asked where he came from. They wondered, where did this man come from? Why is he a count? Well, he claimed, or it was thought, that he was of Transylvanian royalty. But it was never explained, and he never confirmed nor denied any story about him. He was so extremely interesting. As I said, he could speak 17 languages fluently, but not just speak the languages. He sounded like a native when he spoke them. So if he were to speak French, he would sound like he was from that portion of France. Now, people said his Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish were the closest to perfect, and even spoke English. It was said that he was a master of alchemy, and thus garnered the ability to live forever. Or at least he had the ability to greatly extend his life, live with immortality. When he was introduced into the European scene, he was referred to as der Wonderman, a man of wonder, referring to his many talents in art, painting, science, music, you name it. It was said that he could play the piano and the violin, but as a virtuoso, almost perfectly. And he even composed 8 symphonies. And of course, he was a master of science and an adept when it came to alchemy. He was a part of many associations, such as the Freemasons, and there's a few others, but it's all rumored. He was regarded as a spiritual leader, and extremely enticing in the way that he would speak. He gained a lot of fame and favor from his abilities. It was his excellence in speaking and his knowledge in many different topics, and also this ability to just be so many different things that just made him so mysterious and enticing to so many people, especially the women. So early records indicate that he emerged into the European courts around 1742. He was a man in his 40s, approximately 45-ish, but little is known of him before this time. Actually, Napoleon gathered a ton of information on him and kept it in a library, which unfortunately and mysteriously burned down. Between 1737 and 1742, he alleged that he was in Persia studying alchemy. Then in 1742, he went to Versailles for a year, and then he went to England in 1743, where he stayed until 1750, when he then traveled to India on another spiritual journey. After 1750, he returned to France and won the favor of King Louis XV. It was said that he knew Casanova and that Marie Antoinette was enamored with him. She loved his musical ability and conversational prowess. He wasn't consistently perfect. He did have a couple of weird habits. Number one is he never ate anything in front of anyone. He would drink a very special tea, which will make a lot of sense later. He never said exactly how old he was, but when people inferred that he was older than he said he was, he would jokingly say, "Oh yes, I'm merely centuries old." And it kind of weirded people out because of how much he knew. They actually believed that he was ancient. He claimed that he could not only grow but repair flawed diamonds, and actually did this for King Louis quite often. And he also said that he could create gold from lead. There was a documentary in 1972 that showed him doing this, although it's not 100% sure whether A, the documentary was real, or B, this really was the Comte St Germain, but it actually looked a lot like him. This was actually a man named Robert Chamfray who passed away by suicide in 1983, but when you watch it, he's oddly magnetizing, and you really want to believe that he really is the Comte St Germain. There's no question in him that he might be. There's things that he knows, and he talks very fluently about Madame Pompadour and refers to the woman next to him as her. They both kind of have this look to them. I mean, she looks like she might be hiding something, but it's almost inexplicable. And then he died. But he also allegedly died in 1784, in 1798 in a revolutionary prison, in 1815, and then again in 1821. It's hard to say that he actually died, though, because if we were going to go with this man is centuries old, and being an adept alchemist, he could have faked his own death with alchemy. Even Catherine the Great was enamored by him. And even one of his friends, Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel in Germany, actually witnessed his death in their castle. But then he reemerged later in Europe. So in 1784, when he passed away, he would have allegedly been in his 80s, but he didn't appear to have aged at all. But sightings continued right after his death that people were seeing the Comte St Germain. He even was allegedly spotted at the execution of Marie Antoinette, which was in 1793. He took the identity of a man named Major Fraser during that time, who lived alone but looked strikingly like Le Comte. It's believed that he had profound influence on both the scientific community and the governments during this time, which also led him from science into the spiritual community. He pulled a lot of strings behind the scenes, allegedly. There was this one particular story of the king's mistress. In 1760, her name was Comtesse von Gregory. She struck up a conversation with a man. She said, this guy really, really looked like a man that I knew when I was a child, but 50 years had passed and it would be impossible for him to be the same man. So she approached him and she said, hey, I think I knew your father, the Comte St Germain. Like, you look so much like him. And the man simply laughed. And he said, I'm the Comte St Germain, and I recall being here in Venice, but that was 50 years before. And he simply laughed. She said, this is impossible. You would be over 100 years old. And he said, then I am. She quizzed him further, and allegedly he was able to recall specific details about the day he met her and only things that she would know, having only spoken with him during that time, which is pretty incredible and really hard to explain. She wrote it all in a journal, and I just find it really interesting that he would know specific details, like did the Comte St Germain keep a journal and then give it to him and then he memorized the journal? Like, even that doesn't seem plausible. She said he hadn't aged a day. The sightings of the Comte St Germain allegedly go back to the time of Jesus in 320 AD. He was at the Council of Nicaea in a really important meeting that helped define Christianity. Others claim that he was at the wedding in Cana where Jesus turned water into wine. He may have encouraged Jesus to do that. That seems a little far-fetched, but stories continue about the Comte being in throughout history, and he was able to recall these moments and details about these moments that I guess we really couldn't corroborate. But they also didn't have the internet back then, so how would he know all these details? Some people think that he's lived under so many aliases, such as the High Priest of the Violet Flame. This goes back 50,000 years ago. Some say he played the role of Joseph, who was Mary's husband during the time of Jesus, and also taught Jesus alchemy as Jesus grew. He was said to be Saint Alban because the saint performed very alchemic-like miracles during this time. And then he was also alleged to be the actual Merlin in King Arthur's court. I mean, it makes sense. All of these people all had the same type of being involved, but also being behind the scenes, not being the main character of the story, but providing a lot of information that was really useful to push the story forward. He would disappear or he would die. And he'd be gone for years at a time, and then he would return, and often in very similar or new areas. But he always retained the same appearance of a man in his 40s. Old enough to be taken seriously and respected, but young enough to still have vigor for life and get things going. Even the Comte's greatest detractor said that he thought that the Comte was bullshit. He found it really hard to explain how he aged miserably and the Comte did not age a day in his entire life. Legend states that right now, and I hope he doesn't come for me, the Comte is living somewhere in Tibet doing his alchemy. So that's a little bit about the history of Comte St Germain. The one point I wanted to talk about today is this incredible story of the time that he showed up in New Orleans. Now, he allegedly was at the signing of the Declaration of Independence from the forefathers in America, but later on He took up temporary residence in New Orleans before his most recent death. One thing that is often said about him is that he would only drink a specific tea or a wine. He would never eat food in front of anyone. People said that he might just eat oatmeal here and there. Like, it was really, really hard to catch him eating. When we think of immortality, it's hard to not think about vampires, and his actions sort of seem vampiric. He even has a vampiric appearance. He could even be a time traveler, but even a time traveler would age, would they not? So this is the legend of Jacques St Germain, the man known as the Count of St Germain in New Orleans. So allegedly, this bloodsucker moved to New Orleans in the 1900s. Really good looking guy, and his legacy is truly immortal. So it revolves around, again, this charismatic man, super talented. He acted kind of strangely and exhibited some uniquely vamp-like behavior. However, the man loved to party, just like all the other times in his life. So again, he says he's a descendant of Comte St Germain. Maybe he's learning to cover his tracks as history gets better at recording itself. But he claims to be 17,000 years old, which he also says in 1972 in the documentary, 17,000 years old. What makes the situation really odd is that he himself claims that he's born in the 1600s, but hasn't aged a day. And the information that he can provide is quite amazing. And think about it this way, how much information is in this man's brain? Even if you want to say he's only 40 years old, how does he fit that much detail? How does he become a virtuoso? How does he become this amazing pianist? Like, it doesn't make sense. So anyways, this man, Jacques St Germain, is the exact same. He is amazing at piano. He's great with the ladies. He knows so many things and somewhat good with alchemy, but he's like not showing it. So rumors began circulating wildly that he was some kind of immortal, probably from the jokes that he liked to tell, but also because they were looking at pictures. He refused to confirm or deny, just simply reveled in the attention that he got. That is until he got negative attention. So a few months after he arrives in New Orleans, big old house party's happening. A woman jumps from one of his second floor balconies onto the ground. She might have been a lady of the night, but still, she runs for help. She alleges that the Comte St Germain had bit her on the neck. So what she said happened was that someone knocked loudly on the door while the Comte was biting on her neck, which gave her enough time to flee, and the only thing she could think to do was jump out the window to get away from him. So people in the street kind of thought she was a bit nuts. He was really, really, really rich and a respected member of the community. So police didn't really detain him. They kind of just like let him go, like, oh, okay, yeah, like be nice with the ladies kind of thing. So they didn't like actually arrest him. They just merely spoke to him and said, come to the police station in the morning and, we'll get your statement kind of thing. Like, they really didn't take it seriously. So he fails to show up in the morning, obviously. So police are like, whoops. So they go to his residence. He's gone, completely gone. The house is trashed. But it's what they find inside that is truly horrifying to me. So his belongings were all removed from the house. Anything that he owned were gone. There were blood on the tablecloths, blood on the walls. So they didn't find any cutlery or silverware or plates or bowls, nothing like that in the house. They did find red wine bottles mixed with blood, which was allegedly the Comte's favorite drink. Even at the parties, he was never seen eating, like the original Comte St Germain. Like, no one ever saw him eating, but he would drink the wine, but never in excess. He had entertainment at each party, exquisite cuisine, and the best wines that you could get. They said that he would eat chicken breasts, lean chicken breasts, or oatmeal, really simple foods, but he would always find reasons to provide entertainment instead of actually eating while everyone else was indulging. His gatherings were some of the most distinguished in the community, so for him to just up and leave is pretty crazy. But he usually did have a drink in hand with some red-like substance in the cup. Like, the crazy part is he just showed up in 1902 exactly and just charmed the pants off of everyone. Everyone found him charming. He wore expensive clothing. He seemed to know a little bit about everything. The ladies were specifically drawn to him. But again, if he was the original Comte St Germain, he didn't age a day. He was still in his 40s. He was still a really good looking dude that everybody looked up to because he was smart, he was very wealthy, and he was very handsome. So is this truly real? Like, alchemy is an ancient branch of natural philosophy. It's philosophical and proto-scientific in tradition, and it's actually encompassed from many different cultural backgrounds. We know it from turning lead into gold, but the Philosopher's Stone isn't just a Harry Potter reference. It's a real thing, allegedly. And he states in a 1970 interview, allegedly, that he knows Nicolas Flamel. So what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do you think this was a real person? Is he in Tibet or somewhere else in the world? Will he come back and try to help us? If you're out there, please come back. We need your help. Alex Alchemist and I will just keep it quiet, and if you could just tell us the secrets that you do know, happy to help. That being said, I'd love to know your thoughts. Please put them in the comment section down below. Also be sure to like, and if you're not already, please subscribe. We talk about the weird, wild, and worrisome. This time was truly a head scratcher for me. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.